This is We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and skills you need to love better so you can live better. Let me ask you something. Do you keep attracting the same kind of partner, different face, same red flags? Do your relationships feel out of balance, with one of you craving more emotional intimacy and vulnerability than the other? Do you find yourself wondering, why does this keep happening to me? Well, if you're nodding along, this episode is for you. Because there comes a point in all of our lives when we have to stop blaming other people, places, and things and ask ourselves the harder question: what is my role in this? Now, I'm not saying that you're the villain, but if your relationships have a way of leaving you wanting, it might be time to recognize the common denominator. Not for shame, not to take all the blame, but because the greatest possibility for changing your relationships starts with changing the role that you have played in them. This week, Ashton's back in the interviewer seat, and I am the one answering the questions. You can be the hero in your own love story, but to do that, you've got to be willing to look in the mirror. And I'm here to make it okay, because if you don't think I have fucked up every relationship in my life, go grab yourself some popcorn, because you're about to find out that you're not alone.
What are some of the biggest signs that you might be the common denominator in your relationship issues? Like you are the problem and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, people make the mistake of thinking that if their partners don't all have the same negative behaviors in common, if like what they do or what they fail to do aren't the exact same as the partners who came before them, it means that there must not be a common thread. And that's not true. Instead of looking at the specific behaviors of your past and current partners, look at how each partner made you feel. That is the secret sauce. How did each of them make you feel? Maybe you keep feeling emotionally alone, or like they just don't get you, or maybe you always feel like you're the one that's giving more, or like you have to walk on eggshells, or you're the one who has to be the leader because you're the only one who's ever been in therapy of the two of you. When those emotional experiences keep showing up across different relationships, even if the people themselves are totally different, and I can attest to that, I switched genders. That is a big clue that a dynamic is being co-created, whether you're conscious of it or not. Another sign is if you're consistently blindsided when a relationship ends, or if you think that a relationship is evolving into a more serious status with your partner, and then it winds up not, that can be a sign. It also shows up when all of your breakups kind of follow a similar script. They start off with that initial intensity, then over time there's the gradual disconnection, and then the same fights happen in different forms. Again, see above, I changed genders. The same two or three huge problems carried through with every relationship I've ever had.
Regardless of gender?
Yeah, that was a harsh moment when I determined that. That was an awful moment in my life. Okay, so, like, if you're someone who has, you've done the therapy, you've read the books, you've listened to the podcasts, but the same issues keep resurfacing, it's that you're not getting the correct takeaway, right? Like I just told you, Ashton, you were like, oh, across genders, across sex? Yes, across sex. So, like, it wasn't until I realized that the same two or three problems were following me across every relationship. It looked different. Please believe me. My wife, Steph, looks very different than any of my exes. The problems manifested differently. It's like a trickery thing. It's like they look a little different, but on the inside, you feel the same. It's that you're not getting the right takeaway. So you have to land on how it's making you feel, because we all know that insight alone doesn't change behavior. You have to own it. You need like coping mechanisms, grounding techniques, and consistently you have to be practicing different relationship skills to change your relationship dynamics and ultimately your relationship outcomes.
And I'm sure also taking responsibility. It's easy to just blame your ex or your partner for everything that's going wrong. in a
I was so
relationship.
good at that. I think the ability to blame other people is like a core character strength that we have in the family. Like we're all really good. We're pretty intelligent people and we're good at landing on everything our partners do wrong that provokes us. And please believe me, the shit was co-created. I am not here to take full responsibility of everything that went wrong, but I did need to take responsibility of the common denominator at a certain point. One
Yeah.
divorce is bad enough. Two, so here's where my ego can work for me. When I started having such severe problems with Steph, I was like, dude, I cannot go through another divorce because one, I can blame on the partner. Two, I can't blame on the partner. And that is when I committed to doing it, doing the work.
Okay, so let's say someone starts to get the inkling that maybe the problem is them. What's the first step to figuring out what that part of the problem is? Like, how do you come to the resolution that you are the problem and figuring out the problem?
So when someone starts to see that they might have played a role in the problems that they have in the relationships
Yeah.
collectively, the instinct, of course, is to focus on what they did wrong. But it is more helpful to start by asking, what was I feeling in those moments? And how did I deal with those feelings? Again, because the way we act in relationships, it usually comes from how we cope with negative emotions like feeling criticized or feeling undervalued or feeling chronically misunderstood. Three experiences that I've had throughout my lifetime and in a variety of relationships. They don't even have to be my intimate relationships. I've had them platonically as well. So instead of just jumping straight to blaming yourself or feeling guilty, I want you to get curious about what was going on underneath your reactions. That is where your pattern lives. And so that is where the greatest opportunity for change also lives. If you can dial up your curiosity in those moments instead of focusing on who's to blame, you're going to get deeper answers. What I tell my clients is, don't just replay the fight for me. Rewind to like the earliest moments of discomfort. When did you first start feeling discomfort, either physically, because emotions resonate in our physical body with tension or
Mhm.
fidgetiness or pain or achiness, you know, we can usually identify a physical sensation to correspond with any emotion, or just ask yourself, what was the emotion that I was feeling? And when in the story did it happen? That is where your pattern lives. You have to figure out when you started feeling the discomfort and like what was going on at that time. That will tell you so much about what happens for you in relationships.
So what I'm hearing is that essentially, instead of focusing so intently on the other person, we should maybe turn it around and look at ourselves and be like, okay, how am I feeling? And where did this start? And then trying to figure out why it started and how that might stem from somewhere inside of you before just pointing the finger and projecting all of your feelings and blame onto the other person.
Yes, and I'm also saying don't get distracted by your own responses, your own behavioral response style. Go to just before that. And I'll get into the nitty-gritty of how to do this, as you well know, Ashton, at an annoyingly molecular level in a few minutes. But for now, big picture. Think through the last disagreement. Don't get distracted by what he did or what you did. Go to, when did you first start feeling tension in your body? When did you first start feeling discomfort? And what was happening right before that? Because
Okay. The
that is
leading
your,
up.
right, that's your window. That's like your
Okay.
little, if you're going to take a
It's your
wormhole and you're going to
data.
space, that's your space travel. You need to go to right before you started feeling the majority of the negative emotion or the majority of the physical tension. Lock in
Mm.
at that moment, and then what follows will make more sense.
Ah, and this is where journaling, I think, comes in handy. Everyone knows I'm a big proponent of journaling. If you need help tracking your behavior and your progress, Nothing is more humbling than journaling, especially when you have one that spans 10 years. Let me just tell you. Speaking of journaling, I ask myself questions when I journal. So, what are the questions that we should be asking ourselves when we're in the process of trying to figure out what we might be doing to contribute to the problems in a dynamic, especially when it feels like the other person is potentially the problem and acting
Yeah.
out?
The other person probably is part of the problem. Let me say that right out of the gate. And I'm going to sound like everybody's mom here when I say, I don't care what they're doing wrong. I care what you're doing wrong. I am sure the other person is wrong as well. But I want to focus on what you're doing wrong because if you're waiting for your partner to change, you're going to give away all your power. Waiting for that is probably what got you here to this moment. If you want to get out of here, you got to do things different.
Mhm.
So, okay, what questions to ask yourself to figure out how you're contributing to the problem? Start by asking yourself, what am I doing in response to their behavior that might be escalating things? So, go back to a disagreement and pretend I, Dr. Darcy Sterling, was actually able to watch the whole thing unfold. What do you imagine my feedback would be? Try to see your behaviors through a different lens. Imagine my lens, an objective lens, not the one that you always use. Then I want you to challenge yourself to imagine communicating your needs differently. Most of our listeners don't expect their partners to be mind readers, but I mean, hey, if you do, then let me please disabuse you of that fantasy. No matter how many times you may have expressed a need, if the same thing keeps happening again and again and you're expecting your partner to connect the dots, you honestly, you probably have a bigger problem than we have time for. That's a child's fantasy. Like you've
Yeah.
told your partner 100 times what the problem is. There is a deeper issue happening, guys. If your partner's
Mhm.
still not getting it, you have to keep trying to communicate it. And for the rest of you who do attempt to directly communicate your needs, what you have to do is take time to literally write out a script. My partner said X, I responded with Y. Do that. She said, he said, she said. You know what I'm saying? Like Ashton said, Darcy said, Ashton said, Darcy said. Do that for the whole disagreement. And then read your script and literally change the script. Decide that you're going to do it differently. I mean, honestly, if you want to, you can drop that right into ChatGPT with a prompt like my partner and I consistently have fights over the same issue. Here's a script of how our last fight went. Please show me two options of how I might have communicated my needs or my feelings differently. And honestly, if you're worried about ChatGPT not being confidential, then I'm sorry, you have to pay for therapy. Therapy
Well,
isn't
welcome to the
free.
internet.
Right. Therapy isn't free and free advice isn't confidential. But that's where I start. If you choose to answer those two questions honestly that I gave you, and I mean brutally honestly, and you do what I told you to do, you change that script, you will start to see the role you play. You know, it's really hard for us to imagine doing things differently. That's why you have to go to a therapist or you got to be willing to drop that shit into AI and ask. I'm telling you, chat is great at this stuff. I do it all the time, not interpersonally, but like I will give an example of a problem I'm having, and then I will ask chat to try. You have to be willing to put in 10, 15 minutes. And if you can't do that for your relationship, I can't help you. Um,
That's fair.
but that's your doorway to change. You have to be able to see how to communicate your needs differently. And most of
Mhm.
us can't, which is why we either need to be in therapy with a very direct therapist who cares more about meeting your needs than the fact that they're in an eternal cringe upsetting you by telling you the truth, which most of us are in an eternal cringe, which is why we should have great abs as therapists. It's really hard to tell people things they don't want to hear. We care about our clients. I care about my clients deeply. It's very hard for me to confront them, even compassionately and with love, which is how I always try to do it. But you gotta do it. I have, my job is not to make you happy. Well, it's to make you happy, Ashton, but it's not to make my clients
Well,
happy. It's literally to serve them, and I can't serve them if I'm watering down the truth.
That makes sense. I think also, I think we talked about this in another early episode, but there's something to be said when it comes to disagreement specifically of taking a pause. And it's like the meter of how dialed up you are and not responding when you're at that certain level of being amped up, which I think is something like everybody actively needs to work on because we forget.
We do
Um,
forget. I forget. I mean, when I go back and review my week with the people I care the most about and how I showed up for them, which I try to do once a week, gay as that sounds. It's, I try not to be a
no.
hypocrite. I do try to show up properly, and I do review my relationships in my mind at the end of every week. Um, it kills me a little bit because I go through the missteps always happen when I didn't pay attention to my internal signals of anger. Or activation. I was getting amped up. And I teach this. If your discomfort ranges from 0 to 10, 0 is no discomfort whatsoever. You're neutral. 10
What's that
is the
like?
most, honestly, 10 is
Zero
the most
discomfort whatsoever.
I'll let you know when I get there. 10 is the most discomfort you could ever imagine having. If you're at a 3 or above, you should not be having a serious conversation. You should be hitting pause and you should be going through a process of de-escalating yourself, even if that
Mhm.
just means, and I'm not going to derail us by giving that tool here. But even if all that means is that you say, you know what, I want to have this conversation. I'm getting upset. Why don't we agree to talk about it tomorrow? Let's watch TV for now. That's like a cheat, but that's a good cheat. Do that
Mhm.
cheat. Like take a pause, watch TV, and then come back the next day and pay attention. Like you don't want to have the conversation when you're getting escalated. Maybe go back to
Mhm.
the last question or 2 questions ago and see what was happening right before you got activated. You
Right.
rewind the script to right beforehand, and then you do what I last just said. You look at what you said, how you communicated, and you ask your therapist or chat, how can I do this differently? I mean, you know what? I'm willing to tell people to use whatever tools are available. You're laughing because I'm like directing people to AI
It,
instead of
it,
therapy. I surrender. I know nobody wants to be in therapy. I don't want to be in therapy either. Guess what? There's no I mean,
I
you
enjoyed therapy,
did you?
but that's probably because my therapists weren't that great. They
Oh,
became, that's a whole nother episode, which we've talked
okay.
about. But yeah, I like talking about myself. Are you kidding?
Yeah. That's why you're here.
I also love job interviews. I'm like, yes, I can't wait to tell you all of my best qualities and make myself seem like a shining star.
That's amazing.
I digress. I digress.
Support for this episode comes from Mindful Care. Right now, it feels like the cracks in our society have grown deeper. Political polarization, economic uncertainty, and constant stress can leave anyone feeling stuck. Mindful Care offers same-day access to expert clinicians and personalized treatments to help you feel like yourself again. And they accept all types of insurance, so support is just a call or a text away. Contact Mindful Care at 516-505-7200 or visit mindful.care to book your appointment today.
So you've worked with like thousands of clients over the years. And on top of that, you've been married, divorced, and married again.
Thank
So
you.
I'm assuming that somewhere along this road, you've done some reflecting yourself. So if you did, which I'm just going to assume that you did, but you can correct me, what prompted it and what was that process like for you? And what did you learn about you being the problem? Not to
I
assume
wish
that you were,
Yeah,
but
right about now, I wish I had something a little stronger than my water to drink. I did do it. I had to write my memoir. Remember that memoir? The
yes, I
process,
remember the title. I
the
won't say it.
process, I was like, please don't. The
Mm-mm.
process felt like a decades long stomach flu. It was absolutely miserable, mostly because I did it alone. I mean, I wasn't
Aren't you
entirely
supposed to?
Well, you are supposed to write a memoir alone, but it would have been nice for a fucking therapist to have guided me through self-reflection. Instead, I'm writing my memoir, and my manager, Barb, remember Barb?
Yes.
She was amazing during that process. Very supportive, but she's no shrink, nor does she hold herself out to be one. But what she did, which none of my therapists did at the time, was she told me that if I was writing a memoir to prove how everyone in my life was fucked up and I was the victim, the book would never sell. People literally want to see a transformation in a
Hmm.
memoir. They want to see that the author grew and changed to inspire them to grow and change.
Hmm.
That's why, I mean, I love reading memoirs. They're my favorite genre.
Oh,
That's why we love memoir, because it's an opportunity to see someone, a snapshot of somebody's life at a terrible time and how they crawled out of the hole. Um, but in order to do that, you got to find your weaknesses. And none of my therapists literally wanted to do that. I mean, if I'm being generous in their defense, I did have PTSD and a terrible eating disorder. And you don't want to beat the shit out of someone when they're on the ground, but
right.
there's a tipping point, and I deeply needed someone to help me see my role in my suffering. I mean, I just would have come out of it so much faster. So, what I learned, big picture, is that you can be wronged, which I was, and also be wrong. All of that
Hmm.
stuff can be true at the same time. And, at a more granular level, the takeaways, there were so many, but the biggest ones were like, I mean, look, I was raised by a rageful man and a mother who was a martyr, which left me with my own rage and a propensity to be a martyr as well. Like, nobody wants to be in a relationship with somebody who's rageful. So, the cycle of managing that for me looked like repressing the rage, repressing the rage. But because I only knew how to express a need through rage, I would not be able to communicate a need unless I was furious with you. So I had to heal my own rage. That was step one. And then I had to learn how not to respond to provocation with anger. And then I had to stop acting like a martyr. You know, I had to begin communicating my needs when I was not boiling over. I knew I couldn't use anger as the fuel source to communicate my needs, because what would happen is I would cycle into like self righteousness when the people in my life didn't read my mind and meet the needs that only I knew how to express, but wasn't expressing, you know? I am pretty solid on the first one. I have healed that anger really well. The other 2 are still a work in progress. Like, it's hard for me when people legitimately are assholes or idiots to me, because I'm like, I know what my history is, and I'm literally thinking to myself, "Are you kidding me? Like, I am not the girl to fuck with. I am not the girl, it is not the day." Like, I have this whole backlog of experiences that I can draw from to be like, what would make you, but these people don't even know me, you know what I mean? These aren't people in my life that know me. Sometimes they are, occasionally they are, and then I'm just like, so what can happen is I can feel entitled to explode, because, like, if you know that I've spent 2 decades trying to heal rage, more than 2 decades, and like I said, it's healed. Why the hell would you provoke me? Because I can feel entitled. I can feel entitled. So the rage is really well healed. I still struggle when it's somebody is objectively an idiot or an asshole to me. I struggle with controlling it because I kind of feel like, ooh, this is my opportunity to cheat. I can legitimately be a little sloppy with my relationship skills, but I can't be, because I know better and I expect better of myself. Um,
Mm.
but the extent to which all of that healing and the martyrdom, like, if I don't want to be a martyr, I have to ask for help and I have to tell people that I have needs, you know? And I still struggle with that. I still struggle with being insanely codependent, which any of my clients would probably scratch their head over, because I do deliver the truth to them. But you should know I'm dying on the inside, guys. I am literally, maybe not so much anymore, but, there are moments every month where I'm dying on the inside, and it used to be every hour, every day. So it gets better. That's a little exposure
Well, we
therapy.
get stronger. We get
Mhm.
stronger. And I think reflecting is so powerful. Even, you wrote a memoir, but for people who don't want to write a memoir and they just
Your
maybe
book,
want to
your
journal,
journal. Yeah, your
my
journal is
journal,
basically a memoir.
it genuinely like is. And I will say that I'm not a therapist, as we all know. That's why you're here. But a practice has been really helpful for me. I just hit the 10-year mark of my journal. And something that I do is I actually like to go back a few years and read past entries. And I highlight or I write in like a different color, like color, what I learned now looking back. So I wrote all of my feelings, I dumped everything there. And I also feel like people think that there's a correct way to journal, and there really isn't. My journal is literally the most obscene manifesto of random poems, letters to people that they will never get, but I needed to write, words they'll never hear, but they are there. And now I feel better and I don't need to say it to them. Anger that was released, like funny things, memes, like it is just like a mind dump. It's like dumping your mind out. And when you're able to mind dump, you no longer feel like you need to dump it on somebody else. And you're able to like sort through that dump and you can find the lessons. Something else I do is I go back and I highlight my breakthroughs. Like there are so many of my lessons and things that I needed to genuinely hear, I said to myself through just mind dumping. So now it's like annotated with all of these crazy highlights and like it's cathartic now to read. And it's such a wonderful thing for me to have because you can see your growth in real time. Not you can
And
go back and see it and be like, wow, I can't believe that person who wrote this. Who is that person?
well, be kind to her because I love her. I love all the versions of you. And I want you to also, like, you have to be kind and compassionate to your younger selves and not shame them. I don't
Absolutely.
want you to do that.
No,
I
there's no
love
shame.
I love what you're describing. I mean, I knew this, but I didn't know it. You know what I mean? Like, I knew that I've known that you've kept a journal forever. I love that you go back and you highlight breakthroughs. So I'm curious, how does it feel to go back? It's almost like I would imagine going back to a videotape and being able to identify mistakes that you made.
Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy because I was able to see mistakes that I made, especially in relationships, because I journaled so heavily about past relationships when they started, in the middle, towards the end. And I was able to catch so many patterns of behavior, especially with my last relationship in my journal. I was like, whoa, I actually wrote all of the red flags out myself. Granted, I was sweet about it because I was trying to be optimistic in my journal because for
Yeah, of
some reason,
course.
sometimes I write like I have an audience, even though I don't.
That's
Um,
amazing. I love that about you.
I I looked back when I started dating my current partner and I was like, wait, am I seeing any patterns from what I wrote about this one person then to what I'm writing about this person now? And I had a moment because everything that I wrote that I wanted in my future partner, not everything, but most of the things that I wanted are kind of the person that has appeared in front of me. Um, I think that it's really powerful to reflect and journal, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. Just start to do it. Like it seems so daunting. Just literally write one sentence. I'm like the biggest proponent of this, and you can get guided journals. I don't know how you feel about that, but I think they're great
I
for
don't care about
kickstarting.
them. They're fine. They're totally fine. It's
Okay.
like an icebreaker. You can go ahead and get a guided journal. Um,
You gave
even
me
if you're,
one, I think.
well, if I gave it to
It
you,
was
it
a
had to have
workbook.
been, must have been a good one.
It
Uh,
was the attachment one. Yeah. Anyways.
the, uh, the process of writing out things that happen to you. I mean, listen, I'm going to be honest, Ashton, most people are not going to journal the way you're journaling.
It's
Um,
fair.
let me tell you, the first 5 drafts, I'm a shrink in the first 5 drafts of my memoir. I look squeaky clean from beginning to end. Beginning to end, and the feedback was snooze fest. This can't be
Yeah.
true. Snooze fest. I mean, Barb was so amazing. I should dedicate this episode to her. She was so amazing. She would like read chapters, print them out, and like circle things and ask these thought-provoking questions like I wonder if you could have let yourself be unedited what you would have been feeling in this moment. She
Hmm.
really guided me through how to let my humanity out in a way that I don't think most people will naturally journal. I think most people are
We're
going to
taught to not
naturally.
do that. We're taught to not write that way. And something I love to say is write dirty. Write dirty because you can always clean it up. It's like just spew it all out there and then you can always go back and be like, do I want that forever immortalized in paper? Nope. I'm gonna remove that. Write dirty because that's how you're genuinely feeling. I used to write like I felt like I was turning it into my college professor. I'm like, oh, was that a good adjective I just used to describe my trauma last week? Doesn't
Yeah.
fucking matter.
We call it
Yeah.
intellectualization when you do that. Look, it's obviously a coping mechanism for you. Like you lean on your intelligence to help you feel a little less, but you did do the work of trying to write. You may have done
Trying,
it in
yeah.
a super cognitive way, and now you do it a little differently. I can tell you,
And
writing that book was the best therapy I never had. It made me into the person and the therapist I am today. So, it totally sucked, but the outcome was amazing, and it only took 10 years.
kind of like life. Yeah. So on that note, so when I do publish my memoir, just know some of your names will be changed and some of them won't be. You know who you are. Anyways, let's say that someone's listening and thinking, okay, fine, I think it is me. What now? Like, how do you even start from that point of realizing that, okay, it's me? And how do I change this pattern?
So first you got to know that recognizing the pattern in and of itself is huge. Most people never even get that far. So if you're thinking maybe it is me and you're processing what your role in it may have been, you're already ahead of the game. The next step is slowing everything down because the only way to change a baked in pattern is to create space between what you feel and what you do. That space in between, that is where choice lives. And that's where most of us have been acting on autopilot for years or decades. So start by tracking what your triggers are. This is, I'll give you a little step by step, 2 or 3 steps. Step one, start by tracking your triggers. What are the external events, the things that your partner does or doesn't do that provokes your pattern? What's the common denominator? Do that and don't like try and create 2 or 3 buckets. Don't create 500. Like, those of us with ADHD, we have subcategories of subcategories. Don't do that. Make it real. Do it dirty, like Ashton said.
Right?
That should be the
Dirty.
name. Write dirty, no, but do gross generalizations, like 2 or 3 buckets. Do that for a few weeks or a month, and then I want you to scale it up. How do you do that? You ask yourself, what feeling comes up for me when I'm triggered? And then I want you to just notice that for 3 weeks to a month. And then I want you to scale that up. Okay. What does that feeling make me want to do? So we're connecting dots. Does it make you want to fix the problem? Does it make you want to avoid the trigger? Does it make you want to drink or
Drink.
overwork or stress eat? Um, Once you can spot those signals in real time, and it's going to take a minute, like you're going to be able to do it in hindsight within 2 or 3 months if you really try hard. If you really try hard, especially if you have a therapist, you'll be able to do that in 2 or 3 months. Being able to do it in real time, that is so difficult. That's like the third stage of change. Just real fast. First stage of change is unconscious incompetence. That's what you don't know doesn't hurt you. Like you're such a disaster. You don't even know what a disaster
Like
you are.
ignorance is
It's
bliss.
a
Like,
100%. And that's one of the happiest places in the world to be, by the way. The
yeah, I've
second
heard.
the second stage is called conscious incompetence. This is purgatory. It's the worst stage ever. This is when you begin to have awareness around how fucked up you are, but you can't change anything. You can't change anything. You just can realize it, and usually you realize it in hindsight. And that's like purgatory. You're going to live there for like, I don't know, takes most people hardcore therapy with me, your age, Ashton, 28 years old, Takes most people 3 to 6 months to be able to notice in real time. They're doing their homework every day. They're coming every week. They never skip therapy. And their homework is pretty intense. They get that from me in 3 to 6 months. They're able to recognize it in real time. Once you can begin recognizing it in real time, so that's the third stage of change where that's called conscious competence. That's where you're white knuckling your way through using your relationship skills. So now you know better, you have the tools, you can use it, but damn, you have to think your way through and you have to use such willpower not to act the way you historically have acted. And then the last stage of change, which is unconscious competence. Dude, that's when you're on cruise control. That's when the muscle memory, you've done so many relationship reps that like it's in your muscle memory and you don't even have to think your way through it. It is a magical place to be.
The promised land.
There. It is. And you know what? You won't get there with every problem in your life. I'm able to get there with anger now when I'm not provoked, just my own craziness. So when it's just my own normal old historical pattern of anger, like things that used to make me crazy, I'm like, I don't even have a feeling about this. I'm just like looking
And
at the
how
other
nice is
person.
that?
It's unbelievable, Ashton. I'm like
Satisfying.
looking at the other person and I'm just like, you are out of your fucking mind. And I don't have any desire to contribute to this mess right
Mhm.
now. It is magic.
Yeah, it's powerful.
once-
It's
so-
so powerful.
So getting back to that last step, so then once you can recognize it in real time, that's when you can begin practicing doing something different. And different doesn't have to be huge. It could mean hitting pause instead of reacting, saying, I need a minute,
Mhm.
or saying, you know what, I'm getting upset. Why don't we hit pause on this? Why don't we watch TV? Like, again, is that great relationship skills? No, you're distracting yourself. You haven't done like 50% of the shit I want you to do if you're my client. But it's not bad for a listener. It's a nice cheat, and it's certainly better than they're engaging in their old pattern. And then maybe another option is you just name what you're feeling out loud instead of acting it out. The point is, it doesn't have to be enormous. These small
This is something
shifts-
my partner does. Sorry, I just realized he was using that as a relationship skill. You're like, he'll say an emotion out loud like he's a child. And I'm like, thank you for sharing. He'll be like, you know what? I'm feeling agitated. I think it's because I'm feeling hungry. And then he'll turn to me and be like, all right, 1 minute. And I'm like, oh, okay. That solved itself. That was brilliant.
You didn't have to
Go
do a
on.
thing. Yeah.
No, I didn't. But like,
Want
I
a
just
snack?
realized that's why he does that. I'm like, are you like a little child? Like, I love how vocal you are, but that's a relationship
fun.
skill. Maybe I should start doing that. I need a glass of wine. I will be back.
So yeah, small little shifts like naming how you're feeling out loud, done consistently, they start to rewire the pattern. But it doesn't happen overnight. It requires a lot of practice. We're talking about nervous system work here, which is very complicated and hard to do on your own, but you can. You really, really can. And it's absolutely worth it because when your reactions change, your relationships change.
1000%. So, how can you tell the difference between having a level of healthy self awareness and then kind of slipping into the self blame game or codependency? Like, where is the line between like owning your part, taking accountability, and then maybe taking on too much?
Yeah, no, that's a problem. You want to be careful not to do that. I think the answer is all about recognizing that problems are always co created. There are two people doing something that results in a pattern. And the point of
Mhm.
this episode isn't for you to take 100% responsibility for the problems in your life, though I do that as an exercise in two of my courses, just to give people an example of like, this is what it looks like to take 100% responsibility in your life for all of your needs being met. But I digress. That's not
Sounds
what this
fun.
is about. Yeah. So, but that's not what this episode is about. It's not about that. It's about you recognizing how you contribute to the problems. I don't want you to turn into someone who thinks that she's entirely responsible for things. I want you to stay cognizant that this is a two-person problem. What I want you to realize, however, I mean, look, I have built an entire brand on being a therapist who teaches relationship skills to individuals. I'm not a couples therapist. I work with one person at a time, but that's all it takes. It takes one person to save a relationship, but it takes two people to end a relationship because even in the rarest situation where there's one person who is clearly responsible for the worst problems, you need the other person to stop fighting for the relationship to die.
And stop allowing it. Because like one person can create a problem and then another person can allow it. And sometimes by allowing it, you're then just creating a bigger problem. I'm guilty of that. But
my point is exactly the opposite of that. My point is that relationships don't die because of one person. They die because of two people, and one person can make such a difference. I could never do what I did if I didn't see measurable growth and change and improvement in people's relationships. I mean, I'm way too in need of the positive reinforcement and self-esteem that my work gives me to tolerate a huge fail level in other. I'd be a couples therapist. Like, I if what I did didn't work, if changing one person in a relationship didn't result in changing the entire relationship, I couldn't do what I do because I wouldn't get the gratification selfishly. I'm just being honest. Like, I need that in my life.
well, I'm glad that you need that because out of all of the professions, I would say that that's very valid for this one and welcomed, I would say.
Yeah.
Dedication
So
to succeeding.
so I'm asking you to hold two somewhat opposing concepts in your head at the same time. Recognize that two people created the problems. Almost always two
Totally.
people
Always,
created the
yeah.
problems, but one person can be the hero of the relationship. You just need one. So I don't want you to just I don't want my listeners turning into martyrs. I've tried that. It didn't work. It fed into this rage cycle. Don't do that. Realize that although two people created the problems, relationship skills, they're airborne, they're contagious. When you start acting differently, the whole dynamic changes. And there's tons of research to support this. You see it in group dynamics. People see it at work. Sometimes there's a rotten apple in a meeting, that sabotages the whole meeting. We see this
Mhm.
in families, in family systems. People who are family therapists will tell you that, like, it's a dynamic that's created by the whole family. That oftentimes parents will bring one kid in for therapy. Guess who that was in my family? Um, and
Was
right,
me.
yeah, but what a family therapist will very rapidly drill down on is that the kid that's acting out is acting out in response to a family dynamic that's going on. They're just the visual representation of what's going
They're
on.
mimicking what they see. Monkey see,
Exactly.
monkey do.
Yeah, or they're acting out because of they're not
As a
what's not
result of
visible.
what they're
Right,
seeing.
exactly, what they're living through. They're acting out, so it's not always that concrete. But my point is that one person can change a relationship. It takes two people to give up on a relationship. If there's one person still working at it, I mean, it's rare that I see it not work. It's rare
Interesting.
that one person alone can't save a relationship. I mean, unless the other one is just a complete douchebag, and then if
Yeah, I
that
was about to
happens,
say.
yeah, no, I mean, occasionally that happens, but it's rare. That's my point. It's super rare.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little light of hope for anyone who's
Yeah,
in a relationship listening and being like, "Whew, I've got some things to think about after this
yeah,
episode." Maybe
yeah.
got a new journal to buy.
Uh-huh. Love
Just
that.
saying.
Ashton, read us out.
We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. Editing and sound engineering by Bart McGow. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Cristiani. Final note, we want to keep We Need to Talk free and not behind a paywall. For us to continue doing that, we need you to follow the show if you don't already, and ideally, share this episode with a friend. listening is not enough. So please show us some love and follow We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode packed with the relationship, dating, and mental health hacks you've come to expect. References, as always, are linked in the show notes.
Thank you, Ashton.
Thank you.